Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I certainly hope you're doing all right. And I must admit that I'm doing all right myself. I tell you, it is truly a pleasure to be able to join you today and to have you join me as well. First, I would like to say thank you very much for tuning in today. I really do appreciate it. And I would like to welcome each and every one of you to another episode of the Brother Henry and You Show. I tell you, and in case you haven't already figured it out, I am not Brother Henry. Even though I happen to have the same last name as Brother Henry. I am Taron Jerome Harris. No relation to Brother Henry Harris. We just happen to have the same last name. There are plenty of Harrises out here, believe me. And all of us are not related. We come in many different shapes, sizes, and colors. But, you know, the name Harris is a pretty universal name. It derives from England. And so it's been around for hundreds of years. And it's like a derivative of the man's name, Harry, and the word son. And so you have Harry and son. Harry's son. They combined it together and either made the last name Harrison or they shortened it, and that's how they came up with Harris, which is mine and Brother Henry's name. Nevertheless, it is such a pleasure to be with you. I consider it a joy, an honor, and a privilege to be able to come into your presence on any given occasion. So glad to have this opportunity to fill in for Brother Henry while he's on vacation. And I tell you what, I look forward to being with you for a couple of weeks. We're going to have a good time together. And I'm sure that there will be something that is said or done on these two broadcasts that hopefully will put a smile on your face. So I'm not going to prolong the time. We are going to get right into today's subject, which is, I refuse to be someone's consolation prize. That's exactly what we're going to discuss for a few minutes. I refuse to be someone's consolation prize. And, you know, we all know what a consolation prize is. I mean, we've played all sorts of games throughout our lives, you know, for various prizes. However, there are times when, you know, when you play a certain game, whether it's on a game show or just some little informal gathering, whatever the game is that you play, you know, they tend to offer different types of prizes. You know, there may be like a third prize, a second prize, and a first prize. You know, the first prize tends to be the grand prize. It's the largest prize that is offered to whoever the winner is. But what if no one wins either of those prizes? Well, there's a prize that they offer at the end, which tends to be referred to as a consolation prize. Now, how does this tie in with refusing to be someone's consolation prize? Well, let me put it to you like this. Sometimes in life, we encounter certain individuals along the way that make us feel as if we're invaluable. You know, whatever type of relationship it is, it could be a relative, it could be a so-called friend, because not all friends are real friends. You got real friends out here which are tried and true, and then you have friends who are just as fake as all get out. And then you have coworkers sometimes. They tend to lift up certain people whom they work with, and colleagues and stuff, and then there are those who may not have been there as long, or may have been there for a while, but they don't seem to measure up to the level of others. And they tend to be put on the back burner at times. And then there are romantic relationships, or relationships that could potentially evolve into a romantic relationship. And the person whom you're seeking to be with, they may not necessarily view you in that manner. In other words, they don't feel the same way about you that you perhaps feel about them. They don't like you as much as you like them. They may not be in love with you like you're in love with them. And they want to put you in the friend zone. And being in the friend zone, it doesn't always feel good. I know about that. I've been friend zoned more times than I have showered in the last 3 or 4 months. So I know all about being in the friend zone. And it used to bother me when I was younger, back in my teens and 20s and stuff. It used to really bother me. But now, being half of 90, it doesn't bother me anymore. In fact, sometimes there are more benefits to being a person's friend than there are being their lover or romantic interest. Because for one thing, friends don't necessarily have the obligation to people like those who are more intertwined and connected to them, like a lover or, a potential spouse or whatever. So being a friend is not necessarily a bad thing. It all depends on how you look at it and how you put it all into perspective. But then there are times when you don't want to settle for being someone's, tag along, just a third wheel or, something like that. Just being a buddy, just somebody to run along with and stuff. All the time, you don't want to be that way. Sometimes you really want to go up to another level with people or with an individual. And, but that's not what they see in you. They don't get that same vibe from you. There's not real chemistry, and remember now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic type relationship, although at times they can be, but it could be anything. It could be a work relationship or, neighbors, because like you can live in a neighborhood and you can live there for years, and you may know most of the people on the street where you live, but when it comes to trying to deal with them and socialize with them and stuff, you may notice where some of your other neighbors, they tend to give like different little parties and gatherings and have functions at their home, and they'll invite everybody on their street. But for some reason, they won't invite you. And you wonder why that is. And you know that you haven't done anything to them. You've been there for a long time, and you've been knowing each other for a long time, but they don't feel the same way about you as a neighbor that you might feel about them. And they don't have the same level of respect for you like they have for all the other neighbors on the street. In other words, what they're doing is they're treating you like a consolation prize, because a consolation prize is something that people don't necessarily want because they really want the prize. They want either the grand prize, or they'll settle for the second prize, or maybe the third prize. But nobody wants the consolation prize, because the consolation prize tends to be something inexpensive. It's sort of cheap. Something you might go to the dollar store, or maybe go to Walmart, or perhaps order on Amazon or Temu, and you'll let that be the prize that you offer to someone who did not win any of the aforementioned prizes. They didn't come in any place, first, second, or third. They came in on the tail end, last place. So you just give them a consolation prize. It's just a way of saying thank you for participating today, and playing the game and stuff like that. We see this all the time on various game shows and contests and things like that, sweepstakes. You may not win the ultimate prize, but they'll give you something just to show their appreciation for your participation. And that's all well and good, but sometimes, a consolation prize is just not enough. Sometimes you really want to receive that grand prize, or as close to the grand prize as possible. And so it is in relationships of all kinds, dealing with others. We don't want to settle for being someone's consolation prize. In other words, we don't want to feel as if we're not good enough and people don't consider us worthy of their time or their friendship, their love, their kindness, their respect, their generosity, their thoughtfulness, and their concern. We don't want to feel as if we're just wasting our time, pouring so much into the relationship or the friendship, and we're not getting anything back in return. That's a bad feeling, if you ask me. It certainly doesn't feel good, because any form of love is supposed to be both give and take. Not one person doing all the giving while the other one is doing all the taking. That just doesn't feel good at all. But you got a lot of people out here who love to do that kind of stuff, take advantage of you, and and they'll bleed you dry if you let them. They will use you until they use you up. But no one wants to be like that. No one wants to be treated in such a manner. That's cold-blooded, if you ask me. It's something that no person wants to go through and deal with in their lives. But unfortunately, sometimes people do find themselves in such a predicament, being reduced to a consolation prize. And it just doesn't feel good to be in that type of position. So let me ask you, have you ever been reduced to being someone's consolation prize? Whatever kind of relationship it was, whether it was a friendship or a neighborly type relationship or even a romantic relationship. You may have had a huge crush on somebody. You may have liked them and wanted to be with them and stuff, but they looked at you and they just simply did not feel the same way about you. Have you ever experienced anything like that? And if you have, then you know what it feels like. You made all the phone calls, you sent them text messages, and you emailed them, you bought them gifts and stuff. You want to take them out to lunch or dinner or have coffee with them. You want to invite them to come to different things that you had going on, or go places, go shopping and stuff, whatever. But they simply refused. They did not return your calls. They did not respond to your texts, your emails. They didn't want to go along with you, out to dinner or lunch. Didn't want to be seen in public with you, period, because, they probably saw you as someone who was only worth hanging out with in the dark at night, but not in the daytime. They didn't want to be seen with you in broad on daylight. They only want to hang out with you at night when most people have gone home and not too many folks running around and stuff. But now, what kind of relationship is that where people only feel comfortable being with you when the sun goes down? They don't want to be seen with you out in the open while the sun is up. They got to keep everything they do with you on the DL, keep it quiet. They don't want to be seen out anywhere with you, because what it is, they're ashamed of you. They're embarrassed to be seen with you because you are not considered the prize. See, that's what I'm talking about. That doesn't feel good at all. So I'm here to tell you, I refuse to be someone's consolation prize. And if you got any sense, you ought to feel the same way. And you ought not want to be anyone's consolation prize yourself. Because if you settle for being someone's consolation prize right now, you will forever be their consolation prize, because you will never rise up to the level in which you will have all rights and privileges to even be with that person, to be seen out in public with them, no matter what time of day it is, because they're ashamed of you. They don't feel comfortable being in your presence around others because they consider you a huge embarrassment. Who in the world would want to be in a position like that? Certainly not me, and hopefully not you either. So this concludes this discussion right here. And hopefully it's one that you will take to heart and consider. Just think about the things that you've gone through in your life, or you may be going through right now, and realize that you deserve better. No one should ever be made to settle for less than what they deserve. So I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you once again for tuning in to this episode of the Brother Henry and You Show. I really appreciate you being with me today. And please, before I go, I would like to invite you to follow me on my social media. You can find me on Facebook, Taron Jerome Harris. You can also find me on Instagram, TJ Harris 1979. You can find me on TikTok, Taron Jerome Harris. And you can find me on YouTube, Taron Jerome Harris. And I do a little podcast on there, a little show called TJ's Topics. I don't have it listed on YouTube, but you can, if you follow my channel, then you can watch programs and stuff, and you also catch some videos, entertainment, and try to offer a little insight. So anyway, I would like to say thank you so much for tuning in to this episode today of the Brother Henry and You Show. And I want to thank my friend, Brother Henry, for inviting me to fill in for him while he's on vacation. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you back here again next time when we will have another good discussion, okay? Be sure to stay tuned for the next episode of the Brother Henry and You Show. Until then, this is Taron Jerome Harris, reminding you that every round goes higher and higher. Look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.